Okay, so we are here today for the webinar Unlocking Intervention Program Potential Through Expert Reading Support. And you're all here on your own time because you've got something that you would like to see if there's any way to improve it. And I love that about teachers, such givers of your time and everything. And you are welcome to read all of the things a little bit about me, but while you're doing that, I want to tell you my story. I was thinking about this and realized I need to talk about my beginnings a little bit. And I dug this picture out. This is a picture of me in 1994 when I got my bachelor's degree and just had finished my intern year. I was a teacher intern and I finished that first year with zero support. My university supervisor was retiring, and boy, did we all know it. I think I saw him twice the entire year. And I was at a school that was really, really tough. So I was in my administrator's office about once a week in tears because it was just so challenging. And I was always asking one main question. This was a fourth grade position, and I was really struggling with how do you teach them to read? These were fourth graders that were probably more reading about a first, second grade level from the majority of them. And I was always asking this question, yeah, but how do you teach them to read? And the next year I went and taught high school. I actually went back and taught at my alma mater with some of my old teachers. It was the coolest experience back when credentials were a little bit fuzzy as far as what grade you could teach. And so I started a program with ninth and 10th graders who were at risk of dropping out. They couldn't read very well, and the school had a problem with this and was trying to bring somebody in to support them so that they could improve the dropout rate was really what they were looking for. And so all I had to equip me was passion, a little bit of energy, and compassion. And that wasn't enough. I was still asking the question, how do you teach them to read? It was different kids, different ages, same problem. And as passionate as I was, as excited and as much as I love my job, I didn't have any knowledge. I had very little knowledge. So my principal came to me one day and he said, Emily, I want you to do a training with the entire staff to show them how to infuse literacy into the content areas. And I was all of 26 years old, still didn't have the knowledge, but had a great, was starting this program and working my tail off. And I told them, I said, I'm not comfortable with that. I don't have what is needed right now, but I promise you one day I will. That's what I told him. One day I will. So I went on a journey and I sought out information, and I decided to go to grad school and get my master's degree. And so I did that. Master's of Arts in Reading and Language Arts, got my reading specialist credential. And you know what I was still asking? How do you teach them to read? Because my graduate program didn't do a very good job of giving me the practical information that was needed. Great in theory, I learned a lot, just not what I needed really to make the job happen in the classroom. And it was truly divine intervention where I got pulled into a cohort of upper grade, middle school, and high school interventionists that was supported by our state diagnostic center called the Effective Reading Intervention Academy. And that is where my question was answered. I learned how to teach kids to read. I learned how to assess what kids knew. And I was introduced to and trained by some of the greats like Anita Archer and Kevin Feldman and Kate Kinsella and Jan Hasbrook, and these amazing educators that lit a passion in me for intervention in particular. And I decided, I left the classroom about 3 years ago when we moved to Boise, and I didn't want anybody to go through the journey I went through. How many kids had I missed because I didn't have what I needed early enough in my career? And so that is why I do what I do. That's how my YouTube channel was born, and that's why I continue to support teachers, educators, and interventionists in particular. So we have to start with, what does the science tell us? We've all heard, the science of reading, the science of reading. And quite honestly, it's becoming a bit of a buzzword. And I was doing the science of reading back in that cohort before it was called the science of reading. We just put a label on it. And really, that science of reading is that body of evidence that tells us what we need to know to do the difficult work. And so I want to take a look at the simple view of reading. And we're all familiar with this. We have this underlying understanding that reading involves word recognition and language comprehension and reading comprehension. But I think the part that we miss is that reading comprehension is the outcome of all of these other pieces working together. When a student has all of these sub-skills related to phonological awareness, word recognition, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, language concepts such as syntax, communication, all of it works together, and the outcome or the product is reading comprehension. And we have instead treated reading comprehension as this isolated skill that we're going to check the boxes for a number of different strategies. And then by the magic that happens, they're going to comprehend. And that is not what happens. So we end up with older, struggling readers that are now producing or pronouncing these issues as reading comprehension. That's what we see as presented. But truly, it's something else that is the problem. So we have to be knowledgeable teachers. We have to understand that this formula for the simple view of reading really involves the integration of all of these sub-skills in order to produce a student who can comprehend. And we have to be knowledgeable in order to utilize assessment data, choose good assessment data in order to trace back where the issue is, and then match that issue to an evidence-based resource so we can accelerate growth. But we have to be prevention focused first. We're all familiar with the MTSS structure. We see it in all the schools. And what this structure tells us is that if we have a healthy Tier 1 program, if we have a healthy Tier 1 core instruction program, 80% of our students should be reaching proficiency. 80% if our tier core instruction is healthy. That leaves about 20% to then be served in Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention. But that's a really intimidating number, if you ask me. My school was nowhere near 80%. My school was more about 50%. So you look at that and think, well, holy moly, where do we start? And we know that we have to build Tier 1 because that is prevention. Good, solid core instruction with evidence-based pedagogy is going to reach the majority of our kids. And so your schools may have to really look at Tier 1. But I'm going to tell you another way that we might approach Tier 1 improvement is via intervention. And I'll tell you why I say this. You guys are here today on your own time. You have proven yourselves to be passionate, to care about this. That means that passion is coming through on your campus. You may be the catalyst for change into your Tier 1. This is what happened in a situation I was in. Came into a school. I was brought in to resuscitate a failing intervention. It had been really great. It had gone through a lot of personnel changes and it had lost its vision. And so I came in to resuscitate it. School was about 50% proficient-ish. So we did our universal screening and determined that, okay, we're about 50% proficient. What's going on in Tier 1? I can look at that universal screening data for trends in tier 1. It's not just to find tier 2 or 3 risk. And what we discovered when analyzing the data is that our K1 universal screening data related to phonemic awareness tasks, which was first sound fluency, phoneme segmentation, was in the toilet. Like we may have been around the 20 to 30% proficient in that measure. That's a predictable measure. That measure indicates those students are at risk if we don't do something about that. Well, that's too many kids to fit into intervention. So what we had to do was find a way to support tier 1 with that instruction. Lots of relationship building. I don't want to overly simplify the process, but through what we did, because the teachers wanted to improve as well, we went back and looked at the curriculum. The curriculum was incredibly weak in the phonological awareness component of reading. So we needed to find supplements, and we did. So we found supplemental resources and we purchased it for all K2 because our second grade, even though it wasn't being measured anymore, was also weak because they had come through that K1 funnel. Got everybody to have supplemental resources. I trained everybody, went in and did demo lessons to show them how I trained their kids. And with that, by the end of the year, in that measure, we were now hitting that 80%. And it's because we worked together collaboratively as a team, looking at the data to figure out what was missing in tier 1 and then gave those teachers the supports they needed. So sometimes improvement in our tier 1 instruction comes through everything that you have, all the data, all the information that you gather in tier 2. And I think this is contrary to what you might hear. People will say, well, you know, the school needs to really focus on tier 1, and so we're not even going to invest in intervention. And I really disagree. I think your interventionist gives you a different perspective that can really elevate your tier 1. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, we need to talk about what happens with reading development. We know from plenty of research that around middle of first grade, because now we're able to measure oral reading fluency, there becomes a gap. Middle of first grade, some first graders start to really learn to read and they take off. They love it. They're feeling good. It's entertaining. They're getting praise for it. It's easy. And so the Matthew effect kicks in, right? The rich get richer. But our struggling readers, it's not so easy. It's far more challenging. It's, in fact, somewhat painful. And kids will say it's boring or I don't like it. That's just code for it's difficult. And so what happens is they might still go up, but they do not catch up. And intervention cannot just celebrate going up. We have to really focus on catching up, accelerating, because these kids down here, even though they're going up, they are still at great risk for a number of different things. In fact, if we get this wrong, there is plenty of data out there. We know that approximately 21% of adults have low literacy skills. We know that in 2019, only 31% of California fourth graders and 30% of eighth graders performed proficiently. That left 2/3 below proficient. We know that the illiteracy rate of our incarcerated adults is 75%. 75% of our incarcerated adults are estimated to be illiterate. We also know that 43% of adults with the lowest literacy levels live in poverty. 70% of adult welfare recipients are also measured to have low literacy. So if we don't get this right, all of those statistics we just looked back at, it's these kids here. And we can identify them kindergarten. We can see as early as kindergarten their risk level. And we can avoid these statistics if we actually do the work that has been proven to make the changes that will change that trajectory for that kid. And it can be done. We have to start with a common understanding of what reading intervention is. Reading intervention is instruction based on assessed need, and it is designed to accelerate reading achievement. It is focused on improving those 5 critical literacy skills that were identified in the National Reading Panel report: phonemic awareness, phonics, fluency, vocabulary, comprehension. And I would add, after coming back from the Big Sky Literacy Summit just a couple of days ago, I would add oral language. There's going to be a lot coming from me related to language. So that is another critical skill that we need to really start looking at. We know that intervention is delivered with evidence-based resources that follows a structured literacy approach. We should not be asking our teachers, our interventionists, to create their own curriculum, to go to TPT, and to buy whatever. We need things that have been proven to actually work. And no interventionist has the time or capacity to plan for all of those grade levels and all of those groups. We have to have resources, which means leadership has to really understand the necessary investment. And intervention is in addition to that solid core 1 instruction. We cannot pull kids out of core instruction and expect them to improve. You will be on a hamster wheel that you will not be able to get off. We have to prioritize a schedule that protects the core. Intervention is not in place of core instruction. It is not a balanced literacy approach that focuses on guided reading levels. In fact, I would challenge that guided reading levels, leveled reading, does not belong anywhere, but it really doesn't belong in intervention. So many of those approaches work to give kids strategies that are the strategies of poor readers. Look at the pictures, hunt for the sight words, stretch out the word, skip the word. You know, these are things that poor readers do to compensate. We want to give them good, solid approaches. It's also not a place where kids go to get fixed. And it is not the reteaching of grade level content standards. The job and role of the interventionist is to develop literacy skills and to accelerate the literacy skills of our students. So the guided question really is, how do we create a responsive reading intervention program that is aligned to the science of reading and dedicated to improving literacy outcomes for all students? And that's a big charge. But there are 5 basic things that you have to consider. The first and the most important, in my opinion, is assessment. We have to start with assessment. We have to have a really quality screening tool which identifies who is at risk. And every single student should receive that screener 3 times a year. We then, the kids that are at risk, need a good diagnostic assessment so we can determine where the actual instructional weakness or gap is. And then those kids that are receiving additional instruction or intervention need to be progress monitored frequently, which means if they're in tier 2, it's probably every 2 to 3 weeks. If they're in tier 3, it's probably every week, maybe every 2. The more behind the student is, the more frequent the progress monitoring needs to be. The second thing we need to have in place is a data system. And this is a data system that not only tracks your data, but it has to be able to be shared amongst your team. Everybody needs to have access to the data. You can use this data to set goals. You can collect longitudinal information to see trends in your own school, and use that to make future decisions and staffing. We need to have curriculum that is evidence-based. Those evidence-based resources have the research behind them that prove that we can make improvements with these. And those need to target those literacy skills, those 5 critical skills. Why? Because those are also predictive. We need to focus on good pedagogy of our teachers, all teachers. And this is evidence-based practices for instruction, direct instruction being the top one. We need to have really good instructional routines. We need to have great routines for corrective feedback, things that we can infuse across the school so that the kids are getting the same messages. And as interventionists, we have to optimize our instruction for small groups of reluctant learners. Now, if you're upper grade, you know what I'm talking about. The older kids get, the more reluctant they become. And who can blame them? They've experienced years and years of reading failure. To some extent, it could be considered trauma. We know it's absolutely a social emotional issue. And so we have to be mindful of the emotional needs of these kids. And we have to approach them with that knowledge and understanding. And then finally, we need to have training and personnel. You need training so that the resources that you're getting, you're delivering it the way it's intended with fidelity. Now, I always use the word fidelity loosely because the more knowledgeable a teacher is, the more they can make those on-the-fly decisions with their curriculum that kind of might stray from what one would call fidelity, but it's responsive to your student. But you have to have the knowledge first. And we also need to have knowledge of all of the moving parts of our system. This is a system approach. Intervention cannot be viewed as an isolated island. It has to be part of the greater system of the school. So in a nutshell, you do 4 things. You assess every single student 3 times a year to identify who is at risk of reading deficits. You then identify what that actual need is, match the skill deficit to an evidence-based curriculum, deliver direct explicit instruction in small groups using skill-based grouping, and then you monitor the progress of the students and adjust the instruction accordingly. That is the cycle for success. You got to find the problem. Why is there a problem? What's the plan to do something about the problem? And is our plan working? Simplified as much as we can. But there's more to it than that. We have to be able to remember, accelerate, and improve results. So I want you to think about this analogy about preparing for a marathon. I don't know if any of you are runners. I am not. Never will I be a runner. You will only see me running if something is chasing me. However, I want you to think about preparing for a marathon. When we prepare for a marathon, we first have to have the drive, make the decision, and have the excitement and the intention to go out and do it. The second thing people do, I got to get some shoes. Got to get some good running shoes, right? So I'm going to get some running shoes. Well, how many times, if you're into a particular hobby or a sport, you might understand that you go through a lot of trials with certain equipment before you find the one that works for you. You might go through 2 or 3 pairs of shoes before you realize this is the one. This is the one that's matched to my need. But that's not all. We're not ready to run a marathon. It takes a whole bunch of training. And I can guarantee you that any athlete out there, professional athlete, marathon runners that are running the Boston Marathon, they have coaches and they have guides and they have experts, they have dietitians, they have all of these people that are helping them along the way. So really investing in your intervention program is truly like preparing for a marathon. You got to know what you're looking for to get the equipment you need, or you're going to waste money and resources. And you've got to put in the long work. And it's not just you, it's our leaders. It's our leaders that we really need to make sure we understand this is not a sprint. It is a marathon. So we have to start by prioritizing needs. One of the first things that we have to prioritize is scheduling. This is something I get so often from every interventionist I ever speak to. Well, we don't have a schedule for intervention. I pull them when I can. The teachers won't let me have the kids. Yeah, I have to take them out of tier 1. And our leaders, along with you, our leadership teams, need to understand that we have got to prioritize instruction. We have to prioritize literacy instruction because it leads to all other learning. That starts with scheduling. And I was looking at a schedule with one of my coaching partners, and it's something I finally had an epiphany. I'm looking at the bell schedule and I'm like, okay, recess is blocked in concrete. Lunch is blocked in concrete, right? Nobody's moving lunch. We need the same thing for intervention. We need a schedule that blocks it in and says, this is when it is. And it may be different for every grade level, which means that, everybody's not teaching math at the same time or not teaching ELA at the same time because we have to protect the core. But we have to prioritize our scheduling. And it needs to be written, and we have to have our leaders really hold our teachers and everybody accountable, which means not spreading our interventionists so thin that they have to do a million other things also, which is another problem. We also need to prioritize resources. So resources, we can expedite our growth with really good quality resources, or we can waste money. I walked into a school one time, they brought me over to help revamp their intervention. And I am not exaggerating. I opened the closet and it was full of LLI kits everywhere. And I closed it and I got on the phone and I said, you've got some beautiful boxes here. Who did this? Prior to bringing me in, and they knew this was going to be a problem. They wasted hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it got sent back. And so these are things we don't have trial and error time and resources. We've got to know what works and we've got to get right to it. And we also have to prioritize coaching. Now, I'm so happy to see that so many schools have started to bring in instructional coaches, literacy coaches. Some schools have math coaches. I mean, it's awesome. We are recognizing the value of coaching, just like that professional athlete. There is no professional athlete that gets where they are without coaching. And so coaching is different than training. Training tells us how to do something, right? We got to check this box. We have to follow this protocol. This is standardized. And that is important as well. But coaching is a little bit different. Coaching is when you have somebody who knows the way, goes the way, and shows the way. That person may or may not be your instructional coach on your campus. If it is, you are so blessed. Interventionists, I have found, we have such a unique and such a niche job that very few people understand what we have to do. And so specific coaching for intervention, I think, is a game changer. So here's a decision that needs to be made. What support and training will be provided to the intervention teachers in order to ensure success of the most academically at-risk students? That's who we're working with. The most academically at-risk students. And this is where I come in. So there's a couple of things that I can do to help support you. I have had some amazing coaching partners throughout the year. Lisa, you are one of them. We had just a wonderful time together, short and brief, but it was wonderful. And so coaching partners, working with me as a coach is one way that I can help support your school leadership, your program, if you have paras with your paras. Like it's a broader situation. And this is perfect for schools that have leadership that recognizes the investment and is willing to put that support in place. And this involves things like assessment audits. We look at your data. We talk about curriculum and guidance and support. There's coaching, mentoring, support. There's so much. And everything that I have that is already digital is yours. So my new course goes to my coaching partners as a bonus. It's yours because it's going to lay some of that foundation. But this isn't the situation for a new interventionist that doesn't have any support yet. If you're still like, oh, my school doesn't get it. Well, actually, let me build on this coaching situation just a little bit. A coaching, if it was something that you would want to pursue, the way it works is we set up a discovery call. And it may be 15 minutes to an hour. And we chat about what your situation is, and we determine the needs. And I am able to put together a proposal, a contract. I even meet with your administrators so that they understand. We set up a schedule and we dive in. It's not something I can say it costs this much because everybody's partnership is different and it just depends. So if this is something that you are interested in, I would love for you to book a call. I just dropped a link in the chat. This is an email template for an administrator that you can download, make a copy of to start the conversation with your administrator. Sometimes we just need to know, how do we even start this? So I've created a template that tells a little bit about me, and what we can do, and you make a copy of it. You have my permission to change it to do whatever you need it to do and say whatever you need it to say, but it is intended to get the ball rolling. So my intervention course, the Reading Intervention Framework, developing a strategic plan for Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention, is really geared toward K-5 or K-6. But I will say this, I had 3 middle school teachers with me in my beta launch, and they were so happy with what they got. What they said, some of their feedback was, I know where my kids were coming from. I had no idea, and I see what's possible. And now I can bring all of this together. So I don't ever discourage secondary teachers, but I definitely want you to understand that the focus in middle school has some nuances. And I've already made the promise publicly to my middle school friends that the next course I write will be specifically for middle school and high school because I know how desperately it's needed. I was there some of my best years of my career. So this course is perfect for a brand new interventionist, an administrator who doesn't have a lot of understanding in this component of MTSS, or an educator teacher who's done it for a couple of years and is like, what am I missing? This is great. It can be done asynchronously. And because you're here, I love to give you an incentive. So the coupon code RIFWEB50 is active until Friday. And that will give you $50 off of the digital course. It will also give you $50 off if you would rather join me live, because I'm going to teach this stuff live in 4 days. And it's going to start next week. It's going to be Tuesday, Thursday of next week, and then the following Tuesday, Thursday from 7 to 9 Eastern. Okay, those are our times. And I'm going to send some emails out. But the live cohort starts August 13th. And this, I like live because the interaction and that group dynamic is so cool. I know some of you have been to the live Q&As with us, our monthly Q&As, and you know how valuable that conversation is. So that is another option. And that coupon code will take that cost down to $247. It's $50 more to come in live, but it will, the coupon code is good for that. So the digital course has 6 modules. It's 6 hours. I will continue to add and embellish it as we go, as I learn. I just came back, as I mentioned, from Big Sky, and I have so much. I'm like, oh my gosh, I got to create another module. So it will continue to grow. This will give you access for 2 years with this, this course. So it's asynchronous digital. There are a number of PDFs, handouts, templates, guides. There's actually a 68-page workbook that I wrote that you can choose to print, or you can do it in your Adobe and digitally as a way. So it's pretty involved. And we have a mobile app as well that will help to give you opportunities to work through a different medium. So my Trello board, my beta group was given access to my Trello board, and all of my coaching partners have free access to my Trello board. This is a framework that contains all of my templates, guides, research information, places for you to collect everything that you need. It's such a cool platform, and it is available at no additional cost to my coaching partners, but anybody who goes through either the live cohort or the asynchronous course can purchase this at the end. You have to complete my course before I even open this up. I don't want people to get distracted by shiny objects. I want you to understand how to use it and what it's used for. But in a nutshell, these are called folders, and this goes on. I think there's like about 12 different folders. And in each folder, these are called cards. And when you click on a card, it opens up all of the content inside of that card. These are easily movable. It's completely editable. You can share it with your entire leadership team. It's a cool situation. I need to do a quick video walkthrough just to show people what it looks like. So after course completion, this will become available for an additional purchase if you're interested. Google Docs will do the same thing, but my Google Docs, my Google Drive is an absolute mess. Like, I can't find anything if it's not the top 3 things I do. So this is my solution to that. So a couple of next steps. I would love, no matter what you decide, I would love for you to book a call with me. We can hop on privately for a quick 30-minute call on Zoom, and we can chat about your situation. I can give you, you might just want to pick my brain. Sometimes I hop on these calls and they're like, I'm not ready for that, but here's my question. And I will happily share with you whatever, I can under your current circumstance. So you are welcome to do that, but you're also invited to join the course. If you want, and I've got a QR code at the end that you can zap and it'll take you where you need to go. But you can think about if you want to do asynchronous, or if you want to take advantage of the live cohort. This will be the only time I run the live cohort until probably January. I think I'm going to do it maybe 2 times a year, maybe 3. I'm going to do it in August, January, and either like May or June, kind of when people have time. So it's not offered very often in that capacity. So those are some options for you. And up at Big Sky, I was introduced to what she call it. She is an implementation researcher. Her name is Dr. Tiffany Hogan. She was brilliant. I have learned so much from her. And she said this, and it just struck with me. Thoughtful implementation is the key to success. It's not just implementation. It's thoughtful implementation. Any school can hire an interventionist. Any school can buy a resource and say, here. But when you really put in the plan and create the systems that help you to get there, that's when you're going to see some serious success. So I just want to thank you for your time. I love spending time with everybody live. It brings me joy. And I love these pictures because I'm like, I have to prove to people like that I'm legit. Like I actually did this. And so you can see in these pictures, this is me training teachers. This is me walking teachers through data analysis. They are making groups, they are learning, and with my kids. You know, there's a lot of moving parts here, and it takes a lot of time. So my goal is that I can take all of this 30 years of experience and help you overcome some of those hurdles that were and barriers that were in place for me for so long. And I invite you to join me. So if you zap that QR code with your phone, that is going to take you to my website, emilymuccianti.com. And if you scroll down, there's a number of things there, but if you scroll down to the course and you click, I think it's learn more, that will tell you more detail about the course. The course is, if you are on that page and you go all the way to the bottom, that's where the live cohort sign in is. It's on the same page, but all the way down at the bottom if you'd like to be a part of that. So, do you have any questions, comments, observations that we can talk about first? Hi, Marcy. I'm glad you jumped in.
Sorry, I was so late. Oh
That's
my
okay,
gosh, I'm
honey. I
sorry.
recorded it. I'm going to send you the recording.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Did you happen to talk about assessments that you use? And I'm sorry, I missed half of it, but did you talk about assessments that you use to see where the student's reading level is?
I did not in this one.
Okay.
That
Okay.
is a part of my course. We definitely
Hmm.
have it. We have a whole module on assessments and universal screeners and diagnostics and what are some of the possibilities that you could use. Yes, that is absolutely inside of the course.
Okay.
I'm going to stop sharing